All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Laurie Ledley, the clinical sleep educator and president of Valley Sleep Center. And I'm super happy to introduce Dr. Cara English to you guys. She's really passionate about women's behavioral health, especially around new moms. And today we're going to talk about postpartum sleep and how the struggle is real. So thank you everyone for joining. If you're live on Facebook, you can ask questions in the comments. If you're on the webinar, feel free to put your chat in or your Q&A and we'll get to your questions and answers from Dr. English as soon as her presentation is over. So thank you, Dr. English. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Sure, I'll just be here on standby if you need me, okay?
All right, I'll go ahead and I'll start. Instead of sharing my screen, if it's okay, I'll just kind of talk through my points. Is that all right with you?
Sure, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, I think it'll be easier just, for us to kind of have a little bit of a live discussion, and then after the fact, I know you have the slides, and it's fine with me and with Jackie if you want to share the slides after the fact for anybody.
Would it be easier if I go ahead and pull them up and share mine? Would that be okay?
It's fine. Yeah, if you'd like to do that.
I just want to interact and talk. I'm good with this. This is fine too.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then that way I can kind of click through.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Okay, so it's going to be, just kind of the slide here because I've got other things on my screen that I'm looking at. Are you able to see this?
Yeah, we can see it. Is there like a presenter view?
Let me see if I can do that. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, so I want to give thanks to Jackie Caro, who is a wonderful marketing specialist and certainly just an amazing human being, for the metaphor of the hummingbird. She really came up with the idea, and as she was thinking about this talk today, she thought about how just like a hummingbird, the becoming a parent is really like going from a human being to a hummingbird, in the sense that, just that the level of activity, the level of alertness, and the number of beats per minute that the hummingbird's heart beats. And I can't remember the exact thing. It's like something like 500 beats per minute or something very, very high, is just a real push for most human beings. So that's moms and dads, but especially moms, just from the psychological as well as the physiological perspective. And, certainly the hormonal change is responsible for a lot of struggle in terms of sleep. And in fact, research that has been published by the Sleep Foundation indicates that at least 75%, and that's just reported, of moms in the third trimester of pregnancy experience a significant degree of sleep disruption. And so for those women who have been pregnant, for people who've been through the third trimester, you can imagine, just with the physical discomfort, but it's also, and many women's health professionals will say it's the body's way and the central nervous system's way of preparing you for the sleep disruption that you will go through after your child is born. And so, being a birthing human is not easy. And then once that baby comes along, the struggle can become even more real. And certainly that was my own experience. And so today I wanted to share a little bit about what I know professionally, as well as what was true for me, and what is and has been true for many of the women that I've worked with on a clinical behavioral health basis over the past 6 or 7 years that I've been focusing clinically just with women who are pregnant and or postpartum. And I want to clarify that I'm not practicing clinically at this time. I closed the practice in October of 2020 because I am the CEO of Cummings Graduate Institute, where I teach this model of care from an integrated behavioral health model to students from across the country and sometimes outside of the United States. And I just didn't have the capacity anymore to do 2 full-time jobs. So what I'll share with you today, like I said, is my clinical experiences, as well as my personal lived experience with this. And again, thanks to Jackie for putting together such a cute and relevant slide deck to help us along today. So I think one of the mistakes that some parents think, and I certainly did this myself, was thinking when you read things about how your life will change when you have a baby, you think to yourself, or at least I did, and many other parents have said this to me, that they think, oh, that won't be me. I've got that down. I can handle that. That happens to other people, but it won't happen for me. It won't be true for me. And the truth of the matter is, we can't really help ourselves, because from a physiological standpoint and from the baby's needs standpoint, you just are not able to control the amount of time that you have to yourself or the amount of sleep that you get. And it can be very, very overwhelming, especially for those who already struggle with the consequences, very sensitive to sleep deprivation. I was one of those people. I did not know that I was one of those people until after I had my son. And it became apparent very quickly. And I blamed myself. I didn't realize that it was very common. And I'm also a mental health provider. So I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? I know how to treat this. I know how to, deal with insomnia. I know how to get better, but why am I not able to fix this myself? And it was also, being a much younger person, this was 15, 16 years ago that I had my son. I also really didn't know a whole lot about self-care when you have others to care for, being a person who was in a marriage for 2 years. I was used to having my own independence and, caring as a couple with my marriage to my husband, but I wasn't completely in that state of understanding how to compartmentalize and care for myself. And so that sense of time for yourself, the amount of time that you'll have available for household duties, in addition to caring for a new baby, in addition to time for a relationship with your partner, having financial responsibilities like paying the bills. I had a couple of those big ones that really crashed and burned for me and for us as a couple after we had our son. At the time, we didn't know that he had some special needs, but that became apparent very quickly. And so that was another thing that we really had to turn our attention to. And so things like planning a day just would fall apart for us based on what was going on for our son at the time and how much sleep we were able to get at the time. So, all that said, your identity and your sense of self really do change very quickly. And within a couple of days after birth, some parents really feel a complete heaviness of hopelessness of, oh my God, is this the new normal? Is this how it's going to be forever? And when sleep disorders do not resolve on their own, like I thought they would over time, when my son started to sleep a little bit better, you become very desperate as a human, and you start looking for any and every option. You definitely are Googling a lot and spending a lot of time on the computer looking for resources. And so, I really want to say thank you to Lori today for, making space and time as part of her work with Valley Sleep Centers to say, this is actually something that affects so many women that we really should be talking about it. And also, for her to say, for her to really promote the idea that a sleep center and a sleep study is really an option for you. You can do it without the need for a referral from a primary care physician or from an OB or from a midwife. However, if you're working with an OB and a midwife and you have trouble getting them to make a referral, I would say contact Lori at the Valley Sleep Center or someone at a sleep center, because that's really something that goes hand in hand with your whole person care. And you want to make sure that they understand that. So the other thing I want to really point out is that your relationship with your partner, whether you're in a partnership or in a marriage, and as well as your friendships, really change when you have a new baby. And some people think, oh, people really show themselves when I'm going through something difficult. And, this friend of mine that I had that was, my ride or die friend is no longer there for me. So that must mean that they're not really going to be there for me. And that's not necessarily true. And when you're in a sleep deprived state, that emotional impact can seem so much more intense. And so be careful about making conclusions when you're in a very sleep deprived state. Be careful about making big changes. I've had moms who've come in and told me, I quit my job today, my job of, 16 years that I've worked my whole life, because I just don't want to be this job anymore. I want to do this thing and work out of my garage, or, things that are really big, massive changes that they haven't even talked through with a friend or a family member or their partner, because of the sleep deprivation and the impact that it has on their central nervous system, on their frontal lobe functioning, decision making, and so it's really important to get a sleep study and to find out what might be happening, because that's not really something that a lot of primary care doctors, and it's definitely not something that a lot of OBs or midwives are very familiar with from the referral standpoint. So be thinking about that. And if your sleep is really disturbed, you're not able, after a couple of weeks of bringing the baby home, to get 3 to 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep per day or night, because an infant normally will sleep about 11 to 17 hours, depending on the baby's health. And of course, work with your pediatrician, but the idea of sleeping when the baby sleeps, that's not always possible for someone with a sleep disorder. And I was one of them. So my son, when he eventually learned to sleep for longer than 30 minutes at a time, I couldn't sleep because my central nervous system was in absolute alert mode, total rigidity, total be ready at all times. And I just didn't have the ability to get it to calm back down again. I had to really learn some new skills. So if you are a pregnant, a postpartum parent out there thinking about this, please really do think hard about contacting Valley Sleep Center and asking for an evaluation. So I mentioned before the hormonal change, and we talk a lot in the perinatal mental health world about the 6-week baby blues. What is the time frame of baby blues? And baby blues actually only last for about 10 to 13 days. So hormonally, that is when you're going to have a lot more overwhelm. That's when you tend to experience tearfulness, periods of sadness, but then it kind of rebounds quickly. We know that it's not just baby blues. If it is intense, if it is every day, and if it is more than 10 to 13 days following birth, we know that now we're looking at a depression, an anxiety, a more moderate to severe symptom that deserves attention. And so, knowing what hormonally is going on is a big deal too. And one of the things that I highly recommend is there's a place here in Phoenix called Matrescence. Matrescence does a lot of education for pregnant bodies who are ready to go through the experience, but want to be a lot more educated about the changes that will happen both physiologically and psychologically. And I highly recommend doing that as well, because it's something that you will not learn in the birth education courses. So that's something I recommend. When it is depression, just know that it's treatable and that it's not your fault. It happens. In particular, those who are more at risk for postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, are individuals who have experienced depression, anxiety, and OCD prior to pregnancy, during pregnancy. And again, that hormonal and sleep deprivation pushes it to a feeling where it gets worse. So it may get worse for a while, and that's a great opportunity for you to say, okay, now I have this baby, my identity has changed, my sense of time and self-care has changed. It's time for me to contact a therapist to learn more about my body, to learn more about my brain and how I'm going to be functioning so that I can take better care of myself. And we always use the metaphor of putting your own oxygen mask on first because most moms will immediately go to taking care of the baby first because the baby is helpless and the baby has lots of needs. But we say you also cannot pour from an empty vessel. So if your vessel is empty, how can you feed your baby? How can you make sure your baby is safe? So there's a lot of need for self-care, but there's a lot of mixed messaging in our society and culture around self-care as selfishness or as being not a good mom. And so watch out for any of those messages that you're receiving from, social media, especially from older family members. Moms, aunts, grandmothers tend to be trying and have good intentions to help, but they often will say something that is inexact. It's just not a helpful message, and it can cause you to have more depression, to have more insomnia. I certainly did, staying up all night, worrying and thinking about, was I a good mom? Was I doing this? Was I not doing this? And so, from a treatment standpoint, it really is critical that you get care, because when depression and anxiety and insomnia are untreated, not only does it hurt you, it absolutely hurts your child, and it will hurt your relationship with your partner, your marriage. It can cause marriages to break up and end, and it can certainly cause a lot of collateral damage. So what we say is, it's not your fault. It's happening, and treatment is available. So you want to make sure to access the resources that you have available. So here in Arizona, we have lots of different options. One of the things I want to mention too is for perinatal depression and anxiety and OCD, the treatments are very standard. And what you want to look for in a care provider, and I'll give some recommendations in a little bit, is a person who's taken the time to get additional training in perinatal mental health. And the way that you can do that is by searching for a person who has the letters PMH-C after their name, because that means that they have taken the certification from Postpartum Support International to become certified in perinatal mental health. So they have advanced training in assessment and interventions that are specific to pregnant and postpartum moms and dads. So that's a real gift. And we actually just in the past year, thanks to a wonderful grant from the CDC and a partnership with the Arizona Department of Health Services, we were able to provide that training from Postpartum Support International to hundreds of Arizona medical and mental health professionals. And then through that grant, that also paid for people to take the certification course and to take the test for certification. So we were really looking at, how do we increase the workforce, the trained workforce here in Arizona, and absolutely providing that training from Postpartum Support International was one of the first things. So one differentiation that is really true for many individuals who have sleep disorder following birth is postpartum mania or psychosis. And that's a really tricky issue, because if you have bipolar going into the pregnancy, going into postpartum, you should be aware, and your doctor should absolutely be talking to you about a postpartum sleep plan, because the number one treatment plan for individuals with pre-existing bipolar is you must protect sleep. And that's very difficult and tricky if you are planning on breastfeeding. So you want to make sure that you have a solid plan, that you've talked with a lactation specialist, that you've talked with your partner if you have one, and that you have a solid setup so that you can be getting 4 to 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep as immediately as possible following birth. That may include breastfeeding supplemented with formula, which is against a lot of moms' plans. But the bottom line is, if you are manic, or if your sleep disorder causes psychosis or severe depression, you cannot take care of your baby. And the likelihood of you having to go to the top level, which is inpatient care, is much higher. So you really need to talk to your provider. And if you have a problem, get with sleep. And if you are starting to experience some of the symptoms of mania, which are insomnia, definitely, but racing thoughts, and some of the bizarre thoughts, The other thing to know is that psychosis waxes and wanes. It comes and it goes. So you might say something bizarre that your partner might pick up on, and then the next minute be right back with it. So if there's any kind of bizarre thoughts, bizarre actions that are coming up, a family should take care to get an assessment done by a qualified mental health specialist and or a sleep specialist as soon as possible to make sure that psychosis and mania is ruled out and to get a good treatment plan in place. Again, we're not hopeless here, and it's not something that we don't know how to treat. We know how to treat it. We just need to make sure families and individuals understand what to do and where to go for support. So we talked a little bit about individuals with a PMHC designation, that's perinatal mental health certified. There are also plenty of providers out there who are psychiatrists or perinatal mental health specialists or therapists who don't have the PMHC designation yet because they haven't had time to test for it. I'm one of those individuals. There are support groups, there's outpatient treatment, and then there's something called IOP, intensive outpatient care, which is a 3-hour, usually 2 to 3 times a week, or a partial hospitalization program, a PHP, where a person can go for 3 to 5 hours a number of times per week so that you're not actually staying overnight in a residential kind of an environment, but you're getting the care that you need and the stabilization that you need in order to be healthy and be able to care for baby and yourself at home. Lots of people during the prenatal and postpartum period see a naturopath. There are supplements and homeopathic medications that can be helpful, that can support care. I always say, try to do the least restrictive or the least intrusive treatment first. For me, that's get a sleep study done. It's get counseling on board with a person who is advanced at the level of a perinatal mental health specialist. And then let's see if medication is really necessary. It may or it may not be. I needed medication, and I think it's really important for us to stop stigmatizing when individuals need medication, because if a person has diabetes, we know that they need medication. And if a person has depression or anxiety and needs medication to get back to where they feel like themselves and they're at their best, they can take care of their child at their best. Why would we stigmatize that? But it's there. And you, as an individual, will probably have to say, I understand your feelings. However, this is not up for discussion with your moms, your aunties, your grandmas, your friends, your family members, your coworkers, your churchgoers, your colleagues, whoever. But just understand that it is your health and you are sovereign over your body, and you know what you need, and your partner, hopefully, and people who care about you know to support you with that. So just don't be afraid to ask for medication when it's needed. As I said, I'm not doing clinical care at this time. However, we have some wonderful resources here in the Valley that are available. Women's Health Innovations of Arizona, that's WHI of Arizona, and the website is here on the screen for you, is located in Gilbert. There's a link on their homepage where you can request an appointment or you can call and set up an appointment with them. Michelle Lacey is the owner, and she is a perinatal health specialist. She's been in the field much longer than I have. She's been doing education and training with Postpartum Support International and the Arizona chapter for much longer than I've been in the field. And she owns and operates Women's Health Innovations, trains each of the therapists, and does an excellent job. They offer groups as well as peer support, which is another excellent option. You can also talk to Buffy Wooten or Pam Barnes-Palty at Wooten and Associates. Dr. Pam Barnes-Palty served on the Arizona chapter of Postpartum Support International, has definitely an advanced level of training and knowledge. And she's a great person to reach out to, as well as Tatiana Kaufman at North Star Wellness. Tatiana is both an international board certified lactation consultant, that's an IBCLC, And she is a licensed clinical social worker who is a perinatal mental health certified specialist. And her website is here, northstarwellnessaz.com. She provides therapy in person and online. And she is also located in Gilbert. And then there are free online groups offered through Postpartum Support International. And you can register if you go to postpartum.net, and then you'll look for Get Help. If you can't see this entire link here, just go to postpartum.net and click on Get Help, and then look for the online groups. They also have a text line and a hotline that you can call, and that's on their front page. So I usually recommend that individuals who are looking for perinatal mental health support reach out to these individuals first. And I would highly recommend that if you're feeling like you have the potential, if insomnia is true for you, I highly recommend that you contact Valley Sleep Centers so that you can set up an evaluation. It's critically important for you to be able to have some hope and help from a specialist who really understands what you're going through and can help you get back to you as soon as possible. Willow Birth Center. There is one located in Mesa. It's a freestanding birth center. And then there's also Willow on Central. And so these are the midwives that I worked with when I was doing my integrated behavioral health care. And they have integrated behavioral health services to offer. My contact information here, however, is for the university where I work. And you can certainly reach out to me through the phone. You can reach out to me through the email address there on the screen. Or you can reach out to me also at my direct email, which is C as in Cara English, just like the language, at cgi.edu. And so that's really where I'm going to stop and just ask for any follow-up questions, anything from the chat.